As we say in the South, and you know what this means, bless your heart.
If they are to reject witnesses and documents, they're going against not just a small group or not just Democrats.
The credulous boomer Rube demo that backs Donald Trump.
I think we know what we're up against.
You elitists with your geography and your maps and your spelling.
You're reading.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
Tired, lazy, uninformed, uneducated.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
And this is for anyone who may be taken aback by my comments. I want to be very clear here. I don't really care if you are. I hope you are.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, you gotta love that liberal classism, those boomer rubes. Can't read the lines on a map. We talked about this yesterday, the number of times that CNN goofed up on maps. I mean, they had, they confused Mississippi with Alabama. They had Hungary somewhere down in South America. Numerous examples like that. Talk about lines on a map. Physician, heal thyself. Brian Fisher here. The program is Focal Point. I am your host, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent.
As always.
Back with us, Jeff Reed from his battle with the flu bug. How you feeling today, Jeff?
I'm ready to go. The picture on the screen has woke me up. Give me a little reason for cheer.
Oh yeah, if you're watching this on our Focal Point Facebook page or live streaming us, you can audio and video stream at YouTube and on our Focal Point page. You will see that I'm wearing my Jimmy Garoppolo game jersey and my San Francisco 49er cap, a gift from my children for Christmas. So I am locked and loaded. I am ready for the big game on Sunday.
Maybe you'll get the chance to wear that again on Monday.
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping. You know, and I've told you before that we have two grandsons here. When we go over to visit them, Debbie takes them what she calls happies. Got that from our time in the South. That's a term that's used, a little happy, something that makes you happy. So these little gifts, so she calls them happies. So now when we go over there, she walks in the door. The kids, they're 2 and 4. They want to know where their happies are. First thing they ask. Well, you know, and I've told people this before, but this is my happy for our move to the Pacific Northwest. We moved out here to be closer to my son, our daughter-in-law, and our 2 grandsons. And this is God's happy for us, happy for me, that I get to watch the 49ers in the Super Bowl with my son on Sunday. So that's something I am really, really looking forward to. All right, well, let's just jump into it. This is Free for All Friday today, by the way. Free for All Friday here on Focal Point. The number to call, and everything is open season. I'm probably going to give priority to calls that are about the impeachment, what you think about it, what you think is going to happen from here on out, what you think ought to happen. They're still going to vote today on whether they take additional witnesses. Love to hear what you think about that. So that'll be the priority, but we'll take calls on anything. You call in, and Randy will be there. You just let him know what you want to talk about. Brief description. Don't talk to Randy about it, because I want you to talk to our listening audience about that. Number to call to become a part of our conversation is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840, Free for All Friday on Focal Point. Now, very quickly, before we get into some of that material, I want to talk about the scriptures. Well, I just want to remind you, first of all, if you miss a program, you can go to afr.net, click on the podcast button, scroll down, find the Focal Point logo, and you can catch every program on a podcast. We upload it 15 minutes after the program is over. A program you want a friend to listen to. When we send out the podcast information, the podcast is published with a brief table of contents, so you can find the segment that you want to listen to, that you want to have a friend listen to. That's afr.net under podcast. Now, very quickly, turning our attention to the Word of God, we customarily begin this way. We are toward the end of the book of Acts. We're in Acts chapter 27, which is the famous story of Paul's shipwreck. Now, it's interesting because I think there are some lessons that we can learn about what happens when we give people good counsel and nobody pays attention to it. We don't seem to have any respect. We have an opinion. We think it's an informed opinion. We have counsel to offer that we think is good counsel, and nobody pays any attention to it. And we believe we've got counsel to offer that will steer this organization, this ministry in the right direction. If our counsel is ignored, we believe it's going to be harmful to the organization. It will be harmful to the business. It will be harmful to the ministry, but nobody pays any attention to us. And that's the position that Paul was in Acts chapter 27. He says this before they head out of port. Paul says this, "Sirs, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss." They were getting ready to leave in the middle of October. And because of the kind of storms that sweep across the Mediterranean, and remember, Paul had crossed the Mediterranean any number of times in his ministry. So he knew what the weather was like in the Mediterranean in the fall. After you leave after October, this is what happens. And he says, "Lord, it's my judgment," Paul said to those who were making this decision, that this is going to be a troubled voyage. We're going to run into storms. There's going to be a lot of loss. If my experience is any indicator, there is even going to be a loss of life. I urge you not to do it. And they went right ahead. The centurion paid more attention to the pilot and to the owner of the ship than to what Paul said. So they take off, and sure enough, they run into a huge storm. It drives them for 14 days, pitch black. They wind up crashing on a reef. The boat breaks up. People that can swim can swim. People that can't swim grab planking from the stern of the ship, bust it up on the reef, and just kind of paddle their way to shore. So sometimes, and this is kind of the lesson I want to draw today, sometimes when people don't listen to our counsel, we're in a position where we have to suffer the consequences right along with everybody else. And it's interesting to see how Paul responded to this when everything he told them came true. This is what it says, "When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope of our being saved was at last abandoned." This is before they shipwrecked on the reef. "Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and said, 'Men, you should have listened to me and have not set sail from Crete and incurred this injury and loss.'" In other words, even Paul couldn't resist a little bit of "I told you so." And he had no hesitation in reminding them of what his counsel was and how this could have turned out differently if they'd only paid attention to his counsel. Could have averted this disaster. But he doesn't rail on them. He says, "Okay, we're all in this together. I'm not bailing on you guys. I'm not over here in the corner sulking and feeling sorry for myself. I'm in this with you. Here's how we can handle it." And he told them, look, when he had been the night before, he said, "This very night there stood before me an angel of God, and he said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar,'" which means you are going to survive the storm. There's a shipwreck ahead, but you are going to survive the shipwreck. "And behold, God has granted you all those who sail with you." So that tells us that Paul had been praying to God, didn't just sulk, didn't have a pity party and check out. He was praying for the other people on board this ship. He feared the worst. The worst happened, but Paul had been praying for them. And God says to him, the angel says to Paul, "God has granted you all those who sail with you." And so he says to the men, "Take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told. But," he says, "we must run aground." So in other words, sometimes God says this, "I'm going to take care of you," but that does not mean things aren't going to get worse before they get better. But he says it will get better. In fact, it will one day get very much better. So in verses 30 to 32, then, they have that they're trying to save their lives. The sailors were seeking to escape from the ship, and they had lowered the rescue boat into the sea to make their break. And Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, look, God told me I'll save everybody on board this ship, but if these men do not stay in the ship, nobody is going to be saved. They'd learned by this time, better listen to Paul, so they cut away the ropes of the ship's boat and let it go. And so the lesson from this is when that happens to us, when our counsel is ignored, even though it's valid counsel, I've had it happen to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. I mean, I had a church one time that ignored my counsel, and 2 weeks later, the church was out of existence. I was fired, and the church was a total shipwrecked. And I'd given them counsel, could have avoided all that, but they did not listen. So the point here that Paul is making, look, if that happens to you, you have good counsel that's ignored. Don't lose heart. Don't give up. Don't quit. Stay involved. Stay engaged. Be involved in prayer for God's sovereign intervention in the whole situation. And we find in verses 44 that all of them were brought safely to land. Well, let's take these items and go to prayer, if you'd be kind enough to join me. Lord Jesus, I pray that you will enable each of us to be a source of reliable and trustworthy counsel to those around us, as Paul was, especially to those with authority over us. I pray that we will come to be respected for the practical wisdom we bring to every personal and professional environment. When our counsel is ignored, please free us from a spirit of complaint and grant us instead a spirit of faith in you. When we are discouraged and facing circumstances in which hope seems lost, I pray that you will send an angel, a ministering spirit from your throne to us, just as you did to Paul. May that messenger stand by us and encourage us not to be afraid and to keep up our courage. Please reassure us that we will not lose a single hair from our heads until all your purposes for our lives are fulfilled. I ask you to raise up others who will befriend us and protect us from any harm intended by others. Guard our lives from any and all dangers, no matter the source, until our service for you is complete. Grant us faith to believe that things will happen to us just as you have determined. When we find ourselves in an environment where others are fearful, I pray that you will make us a rock and a source of stability and hope to those around us. May our faith be visible to others, and through us may you bring encouragement even to people who do not yet know you. May you graciously give us the lives of others around us. This we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
So once again, Free for All Friday, number to call, 888-589-8840. You want to be a part of the conversation on this Free for All Friday, you can talk today about anything you want to contribute to our conversation. 888-589-8840 is the number, 888-589-8840. Let Randy know what you want to talk about and very briefly what you want to say. Keep it brief so we can load up as many phone calls as possible. And I want you to talk to our listening audience, not to Randy. Randy's a great guy.
Devin.
But, what's that? Is it Devin?
Devin.
Oh, my mistake. I thought I saw Randy standing in the back of the studio there. Devin, great guy, but you don't want to talk to him. You want to talk to our listeners. So just give Devin a brief word about what you want to talk about. Let him get you in the queue, and we'll take as many calls as we can. Of course, they're wrapping up the whole impeachment hearing today. Some possibility that the impeachment hearing could wrap up today. They could vote and acquit Donald Trump by the end of the day. That's still possible, but I'm hearing from Republican senators that they think this thing may slop over into next week. They got to have hours available for people to wrap up their comments, both the defense and the prosecution, to wrap up their comments, kind of closing arguments, and then they will go to the vote on whether they will take more witnesses. If that vote is no, we're not going to take any more witnesses, they may go directly to a vote to acquit. We'll be right back after this message. Stay with us. Brian Fisher, Focal Point.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. We urged you earlier this week as an action alert from AFA to call your senators, email your senators, and urge them to just vote for acquittal. Get this nonsense over. No more witnesses, no extra witnesses. Just end this thing now. Get it over with, acquit the president, and move on. And Devin, the call screener, said he had somebody call in and said, I tried to do that. I tried to call my senator. They weren't interested in my name or nothing. They said, man, we have gotten so many calls on this topic. We know what you are feeling out there, so good for you. If you're one of those people, good for you. And Joe Biden, by the way, the issue today is whether they're going to call for more witnesses. Joe Biden in 1999, he wrote a memo. This is in the middle of the Clinton impeachment. The Senate doesn't even have to conduct a trial, according to the Constitution. They don't even have to conduct a trial, and there's no need for extra witnesses. So this is Joe Biden back in 1999. In other words, when their ox was on the spit, don't need to call for any more witnesses. All right, so the number to call again, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Again, this is the day for closing arguments, and I think Jeff has got a read report for us. Let's hit that.
I do. I was watching the opening of the impeachment hearing today, and Well, I don't really have to say anything. The opening prayer by retired Navy Admiral Barry Black was, he's just that calm voice in the midst of all this chaos. So maybe we could just listen to his prayer.
Great.
Eternal Lord God, you have summarized ethical behavior in a single sentence. Do for others what you would like them to do for you. Remind our senators that they alone are accountable to you for their conduct. Lord, help them to remember that they can't ignore you and get away with it. For we always reap what we sow. Have your way, mighty God. You are the potter, our senators, and we are the clay. Mold and make us after your will. Stand up, omnipotent God. Stretch yourself and let this nation and world know that you alone are sovereign. I pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
I just love that. He's praying on the Senate floor before the eyes of the entire nation, and he prayed in the name of Jesus. I was a chaplain in the Idaho State Senate back when I lived in Idaho, and I closed every single prayer. I had other friends of mine, evangelical pastors. Sometimes they would pray generic prayers in your name, in your mighty name. I didn't do that. Every single prayer that I prayed ended in the name of Jesus. And people would ask me, why don't you pray more generic prayers? And I would just say, look, I'm praying the way that my rabbi taught me to pray. All right, well, let's grab some clips here. Let me give you some quick notes before we go to phone calls and then sound bites. Somebody mentioned yesterday that what Trump was going to be up against in the fall is the B team. He's the A team, but he's up against the B team. The B team, Joe Biden, Bernie, Buttigieg, Bloomberg. That's the B team going up against the A train in Donald Trump. One of the things I've said throughout this whole deal is that the most dangerous place in America is anywhere between Adam Schiff and a camera. And last night, John Roberts read a question, and Jerry Nadler jumped up, went to the podium to answer the question. And Adam Schiff jumps up, and he's running after Jerry Nadler, and he's hollering, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. That's my podium. It's my turn. I'm running the show. He just hollered, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. The rest, I just added in there for color. So again, and it was funny. Jerry Nadler just ignored him and just kept right on talking. And we saw the stats about the amount of time that Adam Schiff has spent talking and compared to Jerry Nadler, but they were the two that ran the House impeachment thing, don't forget. It was like 5-1. Like Schiff had talked at that point 505 minutes, and poor Jerry Nadler a little over 100 minutes. So Adam Schiff, this is his day in the sun. This is his 15 minutes because he's going nowhere after this politically. He might become the senator in California because they love this kind of swill that he's been dishing out. But this is the end of the line as far as America is concerned. John Bolton's come out with this book with supposed to be all of this damning information about Trump and the quid pro quo and all that. Well, here's the question. And apparently, according to the book, these conversations started back in the spring of 2019. Well, here's the question for John Bolton. You're going to make a mint off of this book. If this was so troublesome, if this was so bad, if this was treasonous, why in the world didn't you say something then? Why did you wait till now when you stand to reap a grab bag of money did you come out? One thing that's a definite reality here is the Republican Party is now Donald Trump's party. What you're hearing in the ether out there is the weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth on the part of the never-Trumpers They're realizing now they are stuck with 5 more years of Donald Trump. And the Democrats, that weeping and wailing, those are the Democrats realizing that they too are stuck with another 5 years of Donald Trump. Jonah Goldberg, who's a guy that I like, he's a very bright guy, great writer, but he became a never-Trumper, early in the game, and he has lost it. He says that Alan Dershowitz's words, when he was defending the whole idea this quid pro quo was not a crime, not against the law, this is how nations do business, and Jonah Goldberg said his words were a hate crime against the Constitution. That's Jonah Goldberg, who normally is a pretty rational guy. Hate crime against the Constitution. And I've mentioned this. A friend of mine says, sin makes you stupid. And Jonah Goldberg illustrates it, and the Democrats are illustrating that. And the more ramped up they get, the more agitated they get, the more frustrated they get. They just start throwing pettier and pettier tantrums. They look smaller and more hateful every single day. They were hoping for Lamar Alexander, that Lamar Alexander would be the final Republican vote to ask for more witnesses. He said, no, I'm going to let the people decide. And that's exactly where this issue needs to rest, because this is all about policy differences. Nobody's accused President Trump of a crime. Quid pro quo is not a crime in the Constitution anywhere. He committed no criminal offense. Nobody's credibly accused him of it. This is a foreign policy difference. Is it America first? The whistleblower, this Eric Ciaramella guy, this whole thing, he was agitated because of Trump's America first policy. Obama had been so urbane, so sophisticated, all about globalism, all about one world, all about America finding its place in the world. Donald Trump comes in, knocks that thing over, and says, no, from now on, under my leadership, it's going to be America first. And that's why Eric Ciaramella wrote up this complaint, went to the Inspector General, made this complaint. That's where the whole thing started. So from the very beginning, this has been a debate over foreign policy. So the Democrats are trying to kick Donald Trump out of office, not because he's committed a crime, but because they don't like his America first policy. And I think Lamar Alexander, this is the first time I've been doing this program. This guy has been irrelevant. Ever since I've been doing this program, the words Lamar Alexander have never crossed my lips. Why? Because he's been a cipher as a senator, and now he's retiring at the end of this term. But he brought it bottom of the ninth inning. He brought it. Let the people decide exactly right. And the Democrats are really starting to wig out as they look at their field, starting to remind them of 1972. Walter Mondale George McGovern in 1972, he went so far to the left, he went completely out of orbit. And Richard Nixon, of all people, won 49 states that year, and the Democrats are starting to think that's where we're headed, especially if Bernie Sanders gets the nomination. I don't know if you saw this last night, but Donald Trump had a rally in Iowa. Place was packed. There was excitement. There was energy. There was enthusiasm. And side by side, I saw a picture of a rally that Joe Biden was doing in Iowa. Nobody there. Everybody sitting in folding chairs. They're glum. There's no energy in the room. There's no excitement. There's no people there. The Democrats realize they are completely toast in November, starting to dawn on them. All right. Well, let's grab some calls from our patient callers. Let's go to Sydney in Georgia. Sydney, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brother Brian.
Hey.
Yes, sir. I agree with you about 99% of the time. And the only thing that made it exciting at Joe Biden's rally is if they just saw him still breathing.
Say that again?
Look here, how come all these Democrats want to get rid of the Constitution all of a sudden now become Constitutionites?
Yeah. Well,
that's all they want to stand on.
Well, Sydney, I appreciate your call, and you're exactly right when you say that that's what this is all about, is their hatred of the Constitution. And the reason they hate the Constitution, remember the purpose of the Constitution, the founder said, the entire purpose of this thing is to limit the reach of the central government and to keep power in the hands of the people. So the people elect the people to make decisions for them. If they don't like their decisions, they don't go to court. They go to the ballot box. And Democrats hate that because it limits them. They want to use the federal government to engineer American society. They want to use the power of the central government to tell you and me what we can and cannot do, to make every decision for us, for our lives, because we're rubes. We're these boomer rubes that Rick Wilson was talking about. We're not smart enough to learn how to tie our own shoes. We're not smart enough to wear a raincoat outside when the rain is falling. So they want to make every important decision for us. That's why they hate the Constitution. And this was the wisdom of the founders. In fact, when the Constitution was first enacted, there was no Bill of Rights in the original Constitution. And there were a number of people, like George Mason, for instance, Patrick Henry, would not endorse the Constitution. They didn't want to sign it because there weren't enough limitations on the central government, on what we call today the federal government. And they said without a Bill of Rights to make it very clear to the central government what they cannot do, they cannot take away our right to religious liberty. They cannot take our right to peaceable assembly. They cannot take away our right to freedom of speech. They cannot take away our right to own guns. Unless we get that, I'm not going to support this Constitution. That's where the Bill of Rights came from. And Democrats hate all of that stuff because Bill of Rights limits them and what they can do, their control over the American people. All right, let's go to Michael in Lavon, Texas. Welcome, Michael. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, Brian, thank you for taking my call, man.
Yep.
So I'm just listening to your radio program right now, and I'm thinking about the impeachment trials. They're not technically impeachment. I guess impeachment already happened, so these are just, I don't know what you call these trials.
This is the trial.
I'm curious.
Just for clarification,
Okay.
That's a good point you bring up.
I don't know.
Well, Michael, let me just interrupt just for a second. What Michael is talking about is the articles of impeachment. That's like an indictment in a conventional trial. That's where the charges are contained and the charges are lodged against the defendant. And then the trial is held. There's a jury there. And right now we're watching the trial being conducted. Impeachment is just an accusation. The trial is whether you decide whether the defendant is guilty of the charges or is innocent. Anyway, go ahead, Michael. Finish your thought.
Oh, perfect. No, that's a great clarification. I'm curious if you could talk to us a little bit about what you think American families can do to help the country going forward, because I look at what's happening right now in the Senate, and if Trump is removed, then I'm concerned about the precedent in that sense sets for any president, because I wouldn't even want a Democrat president removed like this just because of the precedent, regardless of what I thought about the president. But then I think the other part of that is even if Trump is not removed from office, then there's still a terribly low standard that it seems that we've set for impeachment to where pretty much every president is going to get impeached from now on, almost, is what it seems like. The precedent is so low now. So is there something that American families can do to help with that, even in like their own small way with their families or with their communities? Like, could you talk to us a little bit about what you think we could do going forward, regardless of whether or not Trump is removed?
Well, that's a good question. Now, thank God, and I mean that sincerely, thank God it's not going to happen. President Trump is not going to be removed. He's going to be acquitted. Nancy Pelosi trying to say, well, even if you acquit him, he's not going to be acquitted. I don't know what she's talking about. That's just gibberish. He will be acquitted. He will be exonerated. And that'll be forever. Nancy Pelosi says he's going to be impeached forever. No, he's not. He's going to be acquitted forever. So thank God what you're talking about is not going to happen. We're not going to have a president removed under such flimsy circumstances. Now, here's a couple of things you can do, because remember, this has everything to do with the people that we elect to public office. One thing you could do is vote for a candidate like Donald Trump again in 2020, because he's withstood this. He's standing tall, standing strong, putting America first. That's one thing you can do. Encourage your friends and your family's members to vote for candidates like Donald Trump. Vote for him again. Vote for candidates that support him. That's something that you can do. If your senator voted to acquit Donald Trump, you need to get on the horn, you and your family, and thank him for doing that. Thank him for his vote. If you have a senator that voted to remove Donald Trump from office, call their office, be kind, be courteous, and just tell them how disappointed you were that they voted to remove a president from office with no criminal behavior that anybody was able to prove. All right, when we come back, we'll take more of your phone calls and get into some sound bites on the impeachment thing. Brian Fisher, American Family Radio. Stick with us.
Here's Twyla Braze with today's health.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point, the home of the fastest 60 minutes in American media. Buckle up, hitting the home stretch, going for the checkered flag. You know, Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee had the best idea that I've heard yet. You know, she said every one of these senators, remember the whole deal about Donald Trump and Ukraine is he was engineering this for his personal benefit. He was engineering this to do damage to a political rival. That was their whole case. Now, Marsha Blackburn said, well, in that case, if that's what the Democrats are concerned about, then what these senators, you got 4 senators that are running for president, they're in these hearings every day, they're going to cast a vote on whether to acquit the president or to convict him. And she said every one of them ought to recuse themselves because they're in a position where they can use their political influence, their political authority, to do damage to a political adversary. So they just ought to recuse themselves. Of course, she is exactly right. You know, this whole thing started with this FISA warrant against Carter Page, and a court has ruled that the first 2, I don't know about the last 2, there were 4 of them altogether, but the first 2 warrants that authorized our intelligence agencies to start spying on Donald Trump, members of his family, and ordinary American citizens were invalid. Now, what that means, according to the fruit of the poison tree, if you get evidence that is obtained as a consequence of an invalid search warrant, you cannot use any of that evidence that you have obtained in a prosecution. Can't do it. That all becomes invalid. So because these first two search warrants were invalid, these first two warrants that allowed for the surveillance of Trump, when they had Trump Tower wired for sound, then none of that could be used. And this whole thing, this whole impeachment thing, goes back to the first two warrants. So this trial should not even be happening because it's all based on evidence that is utterly invalid. You know, they have replaced him. The FISA court has replaced the Obama administration lawyer who was overseeing the surveillance stuff. They've replaced him with a lawyer who used to be an Obama lawyer and a left-wing blogger. So he is an FBI apologist. He denied and defended all the lies that were in the warrant. So the surveillance court, the FISA court, setting its own credibility on fire. You know, of all the people in the swamp, this is the guy that they pick. The guy that accused Devin Nunes of federal crimes. The guy that was defending the dirty cops at the FBI. So the swamp continues to be the swamp. This guy was an ardent defender of the first two warrants against Carter Page. He liked it. But that's one that the Inspector General's found was completely, absolutely deficient. So the swamp's still there controlling stuff. All right, let's go to Jen in Oklahoma. Jen, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hello, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. What's on your mind?
I wanted to let you know that my husband and I are both military members, and so we have a unique relationship with our senators. I have a home senator from our home of record, and then we also have our senators for the state that we happen to be living in. I have called South Carolina, Texas, and Oklahoma senators. All their phones have been lit up like a fire that I have never, ever seen before. And I'm pretty active when I'm talking to my senators and my representatives. I have never seen these phone lines so jammed up before. I have left messages, and I have also spoken directly with these representatives that, as for me and my family, we believe that we do not want to have any witnesses, because if you want to go after Biden, you go after him in a subcommittee. Do not take my president down just to try and go after, on the off chance that you might be able to go after Joe Biden. And that we also believe that our president needs to be acquitted, period.
Well, I appreciate that, Jan, and that's part of the answer to the question of that last caller. What do you do? Well, call your senators. Just do what Jen and her husband did. Call your senators and let them know how you expect them to vote. You know, and the Democrats are all talking about getting John Bolton to testify. There's no way in the world John Bolton is going to be able to testify because his book contains top secret, classified information. He can't publish that book until that top secret information is cleared out of there. He's going to have to clear his testimony with people in the intelligence community so he does not accidentally or on purpose use classified secret information in his testimony. So there, and that would be a lengthy court battle. They wouldn't be able to get John Bolton in that Senate trial for weeks, if not months. Not gonna happen. All right, let's go to Todd in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Todd, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hey, Brian, permission to come aboard?
Permission granted, sir.
Hey, I never knew any trial that didn't allow witnesses. You know, wouldn't you think if you had a witness that was going to be in your favor, wouldn't you want to call them and let them testify for you? I mean, you're being accused, and if you have a witness, I mean, I would want me a witness.
So you think the Republicans ought to support bringing in more witnesses?
I mean, if it's going to benefit him, I think why not? But
yeah. Well, and I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying, Todd. You know, the reality is that 17 witnesses, and there are like 192 video clips in the House impeachment hearings that were played that came from these 17 witnesses that were deposed, and they appeared and gave testimony before the House. So when you hear the Democrats bloviating about no witnesses, they had 17, and the Republicans had 0. Republicans had 0 witnesses. Now this gets to your point, Todd, is in a trial, if the prosecution does not make its case, then the defense puts on its defense. They can call witnesses in their own defense, but they can also call for a directed verdict. In other words, if the prosecution simply did not make its case, then the defense can ask the judge to issue a directed verdict, declare innocent, dismiss the charges, end of the trial. Now, that's what a lot of us think ought to happen here, because the Democrats simply did not prove their case. There isn't anything that Donald Trump needs to defend himself against. Quid pro quo is not a crime, even in foreign policy. Listen to clip number 2. Jeff, let's grab clip number 2. This is Alan Dershowitz talking about Barack Obama. Remember, he issued that famous red line in Syria. Said, you cross this red line, man, the American military is going to come after you with everything that we've got. Well, they crossed the red line. What did Barack Obama do? He did nothing. Here's what Alan Dershowitz said about that and impeachment.
Would anybody here suggest that was impeachable? Or let's assume President Obama said, I promised to bomb Syria if they had chemical weapons, but I'm now told by my pollsters that bombing Syria would hurt my electoral chances. Certainly not impeachable at all.
Certainly not impeachable at all. In other words, just a difference of opinion over foreign policy. We complained about it at the time. We exposed Obama for going back on his word, all that kind of stuff. But nobody was starting a move to impeach him, because we understood that elections have consequences. You make a terrible choice, like we made with Barack Obama, then you got to live with those consequences as long as he's in office. And unless he commits some kind of crime, some high crime or misdemeanor, it's got to be a significant thing. It's got to be treason. It's got to be bribery. It's got to be a high crime. You let him serve out his term, and then you replace him with somebody that won't make boneheaded foreign policy decisions like that. All right, let's go to William in Ponca City, Oklahoma. William, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
All right. I just thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say all about the trials. It seems like if you have evidence, you caught people red-handed, like Hillary with her negligence of the actor that was in Chicago that was found guilty of making up a crime. There was evidence, and he gets off. And the Biden, on tape, and also the people selling body parts at Planned Parenthood, they get off scot-free. So it seems like you have to be guilty to get away, and if you're innocent, they make up something to charge you with. And it just seems backwards to me. And why are these people being pursued, Planned Parenthood? They distracted by punishing. And what about the undercover agent? And that was just some of my observations that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, William, thank you. You know what you're talking about is our justice system is just completely broken in a lot of ways. You know, because the biblical standard is you do not let the guilty go free, and you do not punish the innocent. That's the standard. It's very simple. Somebody comes into your courtroom, judge, your job is to find the guilty and punish them, and to identify the innocent and set them free. And we've got it completely cobbed up. You know, if Donald Trump had been convicted here on this impeachment trial, it would have been a gross miscarriage of justice, because he hasn't even been charged with a crime. Every other impeachment of a president has involved a specific allegation of a crime. With Bill Clinton, it was perjury in regard to the Monica Lewinsky situation, where he took an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing, and then he lied through his teeth. That's a crime. That's a felony. And Bill Clinton, he got acquitted on the charges in the impeachment trial, but he wound up not being allowed to practice law for 5 years. He had to surrender his law license because committing perjury is an egregious offense, particularly if you are a member of the bar. So you're right. We've got a lot of work to do in cleaning up our legal system, our justice system. Had a story today I don't have time to talk about, but a guy that committed 2 bank robberies, and one judge tried to hold him on bail. This is in New York, where the enlightened poobahs in New York have eliminated bail. You can't ask for bail. Somebody can commit a violent crime, and a judge cannot insist that he have to post bail. So this guy was let go. The judge said, all right, that's fine. We'll just put an ankle monitor on him. Well, he cut the ankle monitor off, and now nobody knows where he is. So now they've got a fugitive on the loose. They don't have the manpower to go out and try to rein that guy in. All right. Let's go to Dennis in Missouri. Dennis, quickly, what's on your mind? Dennis, are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, Dennis. You're
Yeah,
on. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
The question I have is, if I went to court and I lost a case, they'd make me pay the court costs and everything. I think the Democrats ought to be paying for the damages they're doing to our country.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point you make, Dennis, because you know who is paying for our president to be prosecuted right now? You and I are doing that. We are fronting the cost. It's all coming out of our pockets. Tremendous amount of expense, witnesses, all that kind of stuff. That's coming out of our pockets. We are paying the prosecutors to try to take down our president. I'm with you, Dennis. I think your position makes a whole lot of sense. Let's go to Donna in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, site of the famous 1888 flood. Donna, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hi, Brian. I have a short poem that I think covers what's going on today and every day. Could I just read it real quickly?
Very quickly.
It's called Employee of the Media. I've killed more people than 1,000,000 bullets. Anyone with reputation, I stripped and stole it. Defaced more folks than 1,000 knives. Left bleeding the hearts of countless lives. Pierced more souls than a sword could boast. Yet I run freely from coast to coast. The media employs me daily. I supply their meat and gravy. I've defamed and crushed the best of men, washed young skulls of their brains, and robbed them of the truth about their freedom. Took nations hostage with no bullets sound, yet I'm still freely running around. There's no background check on me, other than to fully guarantee I'm mean enough to defame the reputation of good folks holding office in this nation. The Bible calls me a world of iniquity. The left wing, the investigation committee, while they're scrambling hard to ban the gun, they gladly employ me, the slanderous tongue.
Dana, I appreciate that. That's great, good stuff. You've made your point very clearly. The media runs free, no checks on them. And the reality is the First Amendment doesn't allow us to put checks on them. If they defame people, that's a different deal. We have just minimized the whole defamation thing. But Donald Trump ought to be able to sue these people in court for defamation. Nick Sandmann, who's the highest paid contributor to CNN, remember CNN had to settle a multi-million-dollar lawsuit with him because they defamed him. All right, thank you, Donna. Very good. Let's go to Billy, Central Arkansas. Billy, I've got 20 seconds. Hit me with your best shot.
Brian, I wish I had more time. Anyway, so, our country needs healing. We've lost our kids and lost a lot of them. This doesn't apply to every parent, but, if even the oldest parents who have children who are 50, 60, 70 years old, go to them. Tell them you're sorry. Try to make it right. Love your kids while you can. The Bible doesn't say to nag up, gripe up, beat up. It says to train up your children. If you can't do it joyfully, they're never going to listen to you. And our country's dying because we're losing our kids. That's really the crux of it. They can't know the love of Jesus if they don't know the love of the parents. So that's
all right, Billy. Thank you. Great counsel. Good way to finish the program. Great counsel from Billy. Let's love our kids. Love you guys. See you back here on Monday.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
I got it on the air for you.
Faith, family, freedom.
Thanks,
American
man.
Family Radio.
Okay, I will try to get the segment.
John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress is considered one.
Jeff,
That came on.
Classic story of Christian's journey in search of the celestial city and its king has been made into a feature-length animated film. And from this beautifully illustrated film comes a storybook featuring...
He told me he did it because he said, "Go." He said, "Go Nine." He said, I forgot to say it." He said, "No, I said it right at the end."
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Taking care of business. So how does my outfit look on camera? Hey, Dad? How does my outfit look? Oh, you're going to get me in the studio?
I'm going to take a picture for JD.